Welcome once again to Cinemaholics, where we talk about the biggest and best films coming to theaters and streaming online. From the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm John Gurney, film editor for The Young Folks and critic for Awards Watch and The Spool. From Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he's a pop culture writer for Cinema Blend and co-creator of Cinemaholics. It's Will Ashton.
What up?
We have a special guest this week.
Yes, we do.
Well, is it special when he was here last week?
I think it's even more special because he's a recurring guest.
Yeah, so series recurring star.
Yes.
He came in clutch for us. We heard his voice last week. Is he a fan favorite?
I would like to think so.
I don't want to get his expectations up,
Sure.
just to disappoint him.
Okay.
When he finds out. Adonis Gonzalez.
What's up, everybody?
From Boston, or in Boston, not really from there, so.
In Boston, yeah.
But talking to us from Boston, yeah. Yeah, Adonis, last we talked to you, you were in the honeymoon period, being in Boston, and it had only been a couple days. How's everything going? How's the move? You good?
I'm definitely in the missing my home phase of the move, for sure. It kind of just hit me like a rock, I think, yesterday. But, you know, I knew this part was coming, so I'm just kind of trying to get through it. The city is beautiful, though. Oh, my God. I haven't been able to walk outside in so long, because Arizona is hell incarnate. So it's been great just walking for longer than 5 minutes and seeing actual stuff besides dirt. So,
have you been to Quincy Market? I
have not.
Fantastic. I mean, it's like the place to go.
Without giving too much away, I'm fairly close to like I could go see Harvard if I wanted to. I'll say that. So I don't know where Quincy Market is quite yet, but
now we know. Well, it's downtown. Now we know why Adonis moved to Boston. He's trying to get into that Legally Blonde sequel.
Well, of course.
So now we've got some information, so that's good. But yeah, it's cool. And you said you just went to your local theater for the first time the other day?
Yeah.
Or yesterday?
Yeah. It was cool. It's a nice little small theater. It's like, I want to say 15, 20-minute walk. So a bit of a trek, but again, it's so nice outside, so I did not mind it.
I was like, wait, 15-minute walk to the theater and you call that a trek? I call that paradise.
Well, again, 15 minutes in Arizona is a much longer 15 minutes anywhere else.
I hear you. I mean, I'm in Livermore, so, California. I mean, we're in the 90s and hundreds pretty often. So
yeah.
We're technically a desert. But yeah, I wish I could walk to the theater. That would be something special. I'm lucky though. I can walk to wineries and stuff. So I actually would prefer that. But yeah, so you can find more episodes of Cinemaholics, including our full archive on cinemaholics.com, including written reviews and other bonus content. If you'd like to write into the show, well, we'd love to hear from you. Our email is cinemaholicspodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support this show, help us keep it alive, there are two amazing, easy ways to do it. 3 ways, technically. The first one is the easiest. I mean, just go on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star rating. Each star represents each time one of us said something about movies that you agreed with, right? And then I shouldn't say that because there are some people who are going to put 0 stars out of spite. But yeah, tell us what you like about the show, what you think we should do in the future. We always appreciate that. We have Cinemaholics merch you can purchase on our website that supports us as well. Just check out cinemaholics.com and yeah, get some merch. We got t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, shot glasses, whatever you like. And then last, we do have our Patreon. Love our patrons. Patreon.com/Cinemaholics. Check out the perks, tiers, all that good stuff. Well, Ashton, what are we talking about on this week's show?
We're talking about a little micro indie. I don't know if anyone has seen or heard of it. It's called Shang-Chi.
You'd think that joke would get old, but...
Yeah. And the Legend of the Ten Rings. We're also talking about a former Sony movie turned Amazon Prime exclusive called Cinderella with Camila Cabello. And we're also talking about a 2020 Sundance movie. It's finally hitting Netflix called Worth, starring Michael Keaton and Stanley Tucci.
Quite the lineups. Yeah, we've seen all those movies. The Cinderella one's going to be a pain point because I know a few people who they witnessed me get mad online about Cinderella. And I've gotten a few requests, a few questions of, are you going to do a review? Are you going to talk about the movie? Are you going to follow this up? Because I very publicly threw some knives at this movie. I have a feeling Amazon crossed me off of every list I might be on that they have access to.
Sure.
But so
Yeah, I was gonna say there might even be more interest at this point in our Cinderella review than whatever we have to say about Shang-Chi. But
How sad is that?
how about
But
that?
we're going to talk Shang-Chi first, that's for sure. Well, we do have one movie in off topics, and I had to bring this one up, okay? Because I don't know how to explain this to you gentlemen, but I think the best first watch for me this week, the best movie I've seen, probably the best movie I've seen in a minute, is called Afterlife of the Party. Well, I know you've heard of Afterlife of the Party, but Adonis, I don't know if you have.
I actually, I saw your review when you shared it, and I saw that Victoria Justice was in it, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I started like the first, I want to say 20, 30 minutes of it. I have not finished it, but it's pretty funny. It's pretty charming, more so than I thought it was going to be when it started, because it seemed kind of cheesy, corny, one of the words.
Yeah. I mean, in my review, I didn't write a formal review, but I did write about it. And I was like, this is a Disney Channel original movie. Like, it just is.
Yeah.
And
I'm getting that vibe already.
It's decom vibes, but it's for fans of The Good Place. Like, that's kind of what its angle is. It's about the afterlife, person dying young and trying to like fix things on Earth, like all that. I don't know though, because I don't think Will's ever seen The Good Place. I don't know if Adonis has either.
I have not seen the show.
Oh, I have. Yeah.
Okay. Did you see all of it, Adonis?
Yeah.
Can I tell you something about The Good Place? I've watched all of it except the last 10 minutes. I never finished it.
Oh, John, you gotta finish the last 10 minutes.
I couldn't do it.
It's hard.
It was. I don't know. Too much existential.
Talk about a rough ending for a comedic. That's air quotes, by the way, if people can't see it. Because I mean, it is a comedy, but damn, that show gets very philosophical, very deep, especially in its last season.
I assume that's why Will Ashton's avoiding it, because he wanted to do his homework first, and yeah. But this movie's on Netflix, and yeah, Adonis, I was shocked by how much I liked it. I mean, I can't come out here and be like, Afterlife of the Party, fantastic, maybe everyone's gonna love it. That's not the case. Like, this movie is not for a lot of people. But we were talking a few days ago, Will and me, about how all this content keeps hitting Netflix and so much of it is mediocre and you have to watch tons of crap to get to the good stuff. And I genuinely think Afterlife of the Party is like one of the good, like of the Netflix variety of like this sort of middle of the road, kind of low stakes, feel good, schmaltzy comedy. That like, this is like one of the actual good ones. Like, this is one of the ones that I would put up there with like To All the Boys I Loved Before, the first one, right? Where that was like such a surprise. People kind of fell for it. I'm not seeing the same chatter for Afterlife of the Party. I don't think people are coming out for it, but they should. It's actually pretty decent. And it's just, I was just surprised because I started it and I was like, I just don't, Chelsea Durman reviewed it for us at the Young Folks. She gave it a 7 out of 10. And that kind of perked my eyebrows up a little bit. I was like, well, 7 out of 10 for this Netflix, Victoria Justice kind of, Then I saw Midori Francis was in it. And as Will might remember, Midori Francis was in that Netflix holiday TV show from last year. Do you remember this, Will? Lily and Dash?
Oh, vaguely.
You don't remember when I lost my mind over Lily and Dash and
that's
took my heart by surprise?
Star of that?
Midori Francis. And Austin... Austin, no one cares about him, but yeah, Midori Francis, yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember. I was trying to remember who the guy was.
I'm just kidding. I care about him. He's a very nice boy, I assume. He was in
Sure.
Paper Towns.
Okay, Paper Towns. But is he also in Euphoria?
Budget Cole Sprouse?
Sure, yes,
Which
that's
one?
it. Is he in Euphoria?
He might be. I don't know. I've never seen Euphoria. The people I know who are in Euphoria are Zendaya and Sydney Sweeney. And yeah, I'm blanking on anyone else. But assuming that is the case, yeah. Yeah, Afterlife of the Party is it's sweet, it's charming, it's on Netflix. Look, don't watch Cinderella. Don't be like Will and Adonis who see me lashing out emotionally toward a movie and say that means I'm gonna watch it when I'm like, guys, Afterlife of the Party, and Will is just like, not gonna happen. So whatever. I shouldn't say that actually, because Will kind of was like, "Hey, should I watch Afterlife for the party for the show?" And I was like, "No, Will, you'll hate it."
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you, but yeah, last night I was like, hey, should I catch up on, because there's also the Billie Eilish movie that hit Disney Plus. So I was like, are we covering that, or did you want me to catch up on Afterlife the Party? And you were like, you don't want none of this.
I trust you. I'll check this out.
Yeah.
John, I care about you. And I was just like, shut up. Okay.
Yeah. But, well, to counter your point, I took a quick glance at Rotten Tomatoes, and it seems like the movie critically has a 50%, but audience-wise has a 77%. So it seems like some people are digging it. I guess it's more of an audience favorite than a critical favorite, but...
That's what, I saw the same thing. And, I saw the critics came out and they had their criticisms. What are you going to do? I mean, Christy Lemire is like 1.5 out of 4. I mean, she has a reputation to protect. I understand it, but she can message me later and just be like, no, John, I actually loved it. Don't worry, whatever needs to happen there. So
she needs to keep up appearances as
I understand. I understand. It's fine. I'll take the hit. I'll take the bullets. But yeah, Afterlife of the Party, sweet movie about the afterlife. I don't want to get into the plot or anything since we're not doing a real review here, but first movie we're going to get into here, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Throughout my life, the Ten Rings gave our family power. If you want them to be yours one day, you have to show me you are strong enough to carry them.
You are a product of all who came before you. The legacy of your family. You are your mother. And whether you like it or not, you are also your father.
I told my men they wouldn't be able to kill you if they tried. Glad I was right.
This is the latest Marvel movie. I think we're at 25 Marvel movies at this point. And I feel like when I say 25 Marvel movies, I can almost, I don't see Will's face at the moment, but I imagine, Will, your eyes are glazing over. Your stomach is churning.
Is this the third act of Shang-Chi? Because my eyes are glazing over.
Okay, all right. I had that same sort of effect. Yeah. 25 Marvel movies. It's quite a lot. That's quite a lot since the first Iron Man in 2008. This latest one is, I think it's the first one in a while that's like an origin movie, right? I think the last time we got a solo movie,
right?
With a kid. I was getting to it.
Okay, sure. But that was 2 years ago.
It up. I was like,
you were but you were like, it's a while ago, but it was that was only 2 years ago.
That's a while.
Well, it was pre-pandemic, so sure, it feels like a lifetime.
Yeah, considering that a year ago was 8 years. That is a long time.
Give me some slack, Will. Jeez Louise. A while, John. It's only 6 years. What? Okay.
Well, no, but people have this perception that the origin stories ended with either phase 1 or Doctor Strange or something. And I feel we've gotten a couple. I don't know. That's just the vibe I get because people are I don't know, because my whole thing is that I was more endeared to the Marvel movies in phase 1, which I guess is kind of the opposite, where people were more taken by them in phase 2, because that was kind of more of the buddy, Avengers type stuff, and I was more about them just becoming superheroes. Cause I was watching those movies during my actual teen years, and so it was okay, these are fun. They have more style, they have more pulp, and now they're just kind of movie of the week sort of things, and that doesn't really interest me as much as when they were kind of more silly and goofy. But
that's where we disagree. I think they got better. I think they got deeper and more interesting. But Adonis, what do you think?
I'm somewhere in the middle. There are a lot of phase 1 movies that I really enjoy, but I do agree, John. I think they've gotten a lot better and deeper. I think that's because of phase 1. We can't really
remember your roots.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of callbacks. I'm loving the What If show right now because of that, because it's pretty much just Marvel's the Easter egg, this series,
I love how What If exists in a world in the real world where we remember what happened in First Avenger well enough, Captain America First Avenger, that they could do a whole spiff of it, right? And
right.
It really checks, I guess, because I've seen First Avengers so many times. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Well, we agree with you a little bit.
Sure.
But yeah, 25 Marvel movies. It's pretty wild. Shang-Chi, like you said, it's the latest one since Captain Marvel. I'm still like forgetting her name. We're getting another Captain Marvel pretty soon. We're getting the Marvels.
Yeah, the
with
Marvels.
her, Kamala Khan, Tana Paris's Photon, or whatever her name's going to be. But yeah, it has been a while. I mean, we kind of had like a Black Panther one, but it wasn't really an origin. I mean, he was already Black Panther. We saw him in Civil War. Before that, we had like Doctor Strange, I guess. You know, they were becoming very few and far between. I mean, the Ant-Man and, you know, it just barely ever happened, right? After Avengers Age of Ultron.
Do we count Black Widow as an origin story?
Not really.
Not really. No, I mean, not a origin. I mean, like, we did see what happened in Budapest.
Right. Like, it gets into a bit of her past, but it's not like the meat of what we were expecting. So
that was a standalone adventure, I'd say.
Like a standalone prequel fixture spinoff. I don't know.
You could argue it's an origin for a different character, but that's yet to be seen.
The pig? Yes, it was the origin story for the pig.
I cannot wait to see the pig more in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Boy. Adonis, please do not get Will Ashton started on that pig. We'll be here for hours.
I just want to know that the pig is okay. We didn't see him get back up.
No, he did. He got back up. He left the room. He was fine. Don't worry. I rewound.
When the pig stopped breathing, I kind of stopped breathing. So maybe I passed out.
You didn't watch the Marvels.
People who did not watch Black Widow and totally forgot what happened in Black Widow must be so confused right now.
You're right.
Which I imagine is so many people. But yeah, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Let's talk about this new Marvel movie. So Shang-Chi is a character way back. I mean, we're talking like 1970s. In a lot of ways, this movie is sort of reclaiming not just that era of Marvel Comics and, you know, one of the first like Marvel Asian Avengers and heroes, but in a way also this piece of the lore related to Iron Man that they've had for quite a while. So if you, I don't know, Marvel heads might remember the 10 Rings is like something that's been come up in Marvel a few times at this point, Marvel movies. The first one being the 10 Rings was the organization that took Tony Stark in the first Iron Man. They're kind of loosely related to the same thing in this movie, but they're kind of doing something different with it. The movie kind of starts by explaining that the 10 Rings, the Mandarin, stuff that has been referenced in like Iron Man and Iron Man 3 actually is like under the purview of Tony Leung, who, you know, Tony Leung, the legendary Tony Leung, who I should bring this up at this point. Actually, I didn't watch any trailers for Shang-Chi. I didn't know who was in it. I think I might have heard that Awkwafina was in it, for example. Didn't really realize it until I watched the movie. Did not know Tony Leung was in this movie. So you can imagine my hype when I saw him. I was like, no freaking way. They actually got this guy, you know, one of the all-time legendary Chinese actors. Like, well done, Marvel. Fantastic casting. And, looking back on the film, absolutely got to be my favorite part of this movie in general. But yeah, so the legendary Tony Leung is in this. And he is like I forget, Adonis, do you remember the name of the Mandarin though? And like the movie, like he has a bunch of different names, right? And I don't quite remember what he is in this more officially.
Like his real name?
Yeah, I think Wenwu is like, I don't know if that's what they refer to him, but I think that's like the comics accurate name, if I'm not mistaken.
Wenwu is actually, I believe, made for the film. I think that's the name they gave him for the film, because in the comics, I think they just called him the Mandarin, and for obvious reasons, they didn't want to keep going on with that.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking, because I know. Yeah, because I know in the comics, Shang-Chi's father is different from the Mandarin. His father in the comics, right, is a different character, Fu Manchu or something.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
and I think they kind of mixed it up a bit. Well, I was thinking the Mandarin had like a different name too, but I'm not 100% sure. We're not comics experts, but we're trying. But yeah, okay. So he's in this movie. We get introduced to him. He's like the Mandarin, right? So he's like this powerful guy with these rings that like slide off of his hands, and like they can do all kinds of like cool magic-y stuff. And we won't give anything else away, but over the course of like the beginning of the movie, we sort of get introduced to Shang-Chi, who lives in San Francisco. And, my neck of the woods. I remember Will Ashton, was watching this movie. He gave me a little text. He was like, you know what, John? Yeah, we've had all these movies lately in Pittsburgh. Now it's your time. Now the Bay Area finally has a movie set inside of it. Finally. So appreciate you giving me that baton. So anyway, we catch up with this guy, Shang-Chi, who, clearly is like the son of Tony Leung's character. And he's played by Simu Liu. And he and Awkwafina, they're like valets, they're just kind of living it up in San Francisco. And we don't quite know what's up with him. Like, hey, like, you're kind of related to all this like kind of magic-y stuff that goes on. And then sure enough, a bunch of wild and intense things happen. We find out that his real name is Shang-Chi, but he goes by Sean in America. And he and Awkwafina go on this grand quest to try to save this enclave from his father's destructive goals to do a bunch of stuff that I think ultimately in the end doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I'll say easiest thing for me to say about this movie, first half of it, really cool first half. The movie in general blends 3 different flavors of Chinese cinema that I really like. Like the first part of it, full-on Jackie Chan kung fu action movie, street brawls, I think that we get like 2 pretty decent fight scenes like that. Then we kind of move into like the sort of like the Yakuza triad kind of Chinese film. That's when we actually go to, I think it was Macau in the movie. And I'll have to apologize because I saw the movie like 2 weeks ago, so I might get a few things wrong here and there. But they have this awesome like underground fight club, gangland kind of thing. And then the movie gets into like the wuxia portion where it's like high fantasy. It's like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Michelle Yeoh is even in it. And all kinds of stuff happens in the more fantastical realm. And that's where I think the movie just sort of flatlines for me. I lost total interest. I lost total grip with this movie. And yeah, by the end of it, I was super checked out and I was pretty disappointed. People are loving this movie, though. The critics are raving about it at the moment. And I'm happy to see it. It's making money at the box office left and right, which I think it's like shattering Labor Day box office records. It's already made for the 4-day weekend $127 million. It's a hit. It's doing great, even in pandemic dollars. But Will, what did you think of Shang-Chi? Did you think Shang-Chi has a lot of chi, that energy that is?
I'm not too far from where you were on it. I think, like you said before, knowing that you were more reserved on the film, I kept my expectations in check. And for the first, I want to say like 30, 45 minutes, I was like, I'm actually kind of digging this thing. I'm pretty jaded at this point with the
John's
MCU.
full of it.
I don't know, but I was just like, I was thinking just like, am I going to be coming on being the more positive of the two for a new Marvel MCU movie? And like you were suggesting, there's like a big bus brawl that's like a mix of like the bus fight scene from Police Story with like some of the like over the top zaniness of Michael Bay's The Rock, like that scene where like the subway train is like going and all that. And it was like kind of like a fun mix of those 2 scenes.
And
like
Speed.
I think, yeah, sure, Speed. But yeah, I mean, it's like everything about Marvel nowadays, and I'm hoping this changes with the Eternals, but like it kind of feels like it's made an echo chamber. Like everything kind of feels like it doesn't owe itself to reality, but that scene is just so stylized in a way that the rest of the movie isn't, that I was just kind of wondering like, where's this movie for the rest of it? Like that, like everything, especially the fight choreography, just it's so inspired and zany and silly, and it's well done. And I'm like, okay, yeah, if it's going to be like this for, like a big Hollywood martial arts movie, like, sure, I'm down with that. And as you were suggesting, the balloon as it went along started to deflate. I think just because it kind of felt like it had to do too much at once. I think once we established more of Shang-Chi's lore, it just kind of felt like there was a lot of scenes in the second half of the movie where it just had to like basically establish him as a character, his like rise as a soon to be like Marvel mainstay and just like the world and the lore itself that I just felt like the movie didn't really have enough time to breathe and really have that return to like the zaniness and silliness of the earlier half of the film, this sort of like breathlessness of the first 45 minutes or so. And that's where I found myself just basically checking out because, yeah, it just doesn't really have as much going for it. It just kind of there's like, and unfortunately, there's still that sameness of the other Marvel movies. Like it doesn't, like the style that was introduced earlier on is mostly lost. And it just feels like there's a lot of green screens. The special effects are very like touch and go. Some of it's pretty good. Some of it just feels like it's very clearly like they shot this movie a year ago and they didn't really quite finish these certain shots. And so,
yeah, it feels rushed.
Yeah. Cause wasn't it supposed to come out after the Eternals initially?
It was.
Yeah.
They announced it in July 2019. You might recall that was the time when we were talking about Lion King, I think, and Marvel made like a bunch of announcements. I'm going to talking about that more than we talked about the Lion King. But I don't think they shot it until during the pandemic. I don't think they, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they got started until 2020.
Yeah, I think
it was like right before the pandemic, and they didn't finish.
Right. Yeah, I think they had to finish it in the second half of 2020.
It definitely feels that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what was shot before and what was shot after, but there's just unfortunately there's just some parts in the second half that just feel like they weren't really quite finished yet, and which is a shame because it just does it takes you out of the movie. It just feels like you're still watching assembly cut at times, which is a shame. But.
Yeah. That said, though, I mean, I do want to point out, because I did look into this, they did some of the San Francisco stuff. They did do it during the pandemic. And I think that part of the reason some of those scenes really work is because during that time, this was like last summer, because like stuff was shut down and because it was, it was a time when a lot of things were closed. It was actually it seems like it was pretty easy for them to pull off a lot of those scenes, like particularly the bus scene. I think they did a lot of that last summer, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I mean, I think for me, what feels rushed is more like the special effects and the post-production and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. But also, I feel like, I mean, as you were suggesting before, Tony Leung, like, such a huge presence in Chinese cinema, but especially here, like, his charisma is just off the charts. And, like, even just, like, a smoldering glance just has more charisma and sensuality than your average Marvel movie. Like, I know especially when he was cast, there's a lot of stuff on Twitter where it's just like, oh, so I guess, like, there's just inherently going to be sensuality in these Marvel movies now because Tony Leung is here, and like the man just cannot be sexual. He has that instant like chemistry, and it just you can't that magnetism that you just can't take your eyes off of. And I think that's true here, and I think the movie is very respectful of that and gives him like they don't feel like they're wasting his time, but I also feel like that kind of takes away from Shang-Chi's story as it goes along because we spent so much time focusing on him, and also just like his charisma overtakes our lead actor's screen presence that by the end I feel like I didn't really get like a full well-rounded story from him, and like even though he has like a great showcase with that bus scene, I just feel like otherwise he didn't really get as much time to shine in what should have been his movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, the one wuxia martial arts scene that I thought was fantastic was one of the first ones, which we had Fa La Chen, who plays the mother of Shang-Chi. And she has like a little like, sexy fight with Tony Leung. And it's like, I was surprised I wasn't getting like static cling from the electricity, sitting in the theater. And I should also say too, I did see this in a theater. I think Will saw it in a drive-in, and Donis, I think you saw it in a theater. And a little tough to see movies in theaters right now. So we don't recommend you do that if it's not safe. But I was at a screening, so it was like very limited and all of that stuff. And I don't know if it was like the big screen kind of like sort of amplified a lot of the lack of polish. I'm curious what the movie would look like down the road and on a smaller screen. I'm not sure. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there, Will. But Adonis Gonzalez, I'll bring you in here. And I wanted to, I forgot to mention that, Destin Daniel Cretton directed this movie. He also did Short Term 12, great movie, Brie Larson, and one of the early Lakeith Stanfield films. Also did Glass Castle, not as widely celebrated. Just Mercy, yeah, people liked it. Okay, but yeah, this movie obviously is much bigger on his radar. So yeah, where are you at with Shang-Chi?
Honestly, I loved it. I think that I liked the ending or like the third act a lot more than you guys did. But I do agree with you. The CGI, I did notice a point in the movie, and it was around the time where they really got into the wuxia stuff, where the polish was just kind of not there. Like there's a certain scene I'm trying to remember where I looked at it and I went, oh, that's not very finished. I was a little more willing to excuse it because I really liked I liked how it kept to the theme that like Shang-Chi is sort of in between these two worlds, between being, in tune with his culture and his heritage, and also, being a millennial Asian American in modern day America. And I liked that the movie sort of started off that way, like starting off with Tony Leung doing some really cool like Ip Man level stuff. Like that's a really great callback to like one of the best actors in Hollywood, like in history. And I like how it started with them talking in Chinese, with the subtitles. I was like, that's awesome, because I was a little worried that Marvel wasn't going to like fully commit in the way they did with Black Panther. Fully commit with the theme that they're going for. But I did like the first and the second half a little more because it had that theme of like I said, like mixing his past with like his present and his future. And it was all kind of really well and like blended together. I think that if they had introduced a lot of the stuff going on in the third act a little earlier, like they introduced magic pretty early on in the movie, especially with that sexy fight between Fala Chin and
right
Tony
away,
Leung.
really.
Like right away, yeah.
Don't waste time.
But it's not like at least I don't think it's on the level that they show it at the end there. Like it's weird. It's almost like an entirely different movie. Like it feels kind of like Shang-Chi 2 would have had that ending. But I don't know. Besides the CGI being a little unpolished, I didn't really have an issue with the third act. I thought that it wrapped it up pretty nicely. I like that they kept enough time to like they didn't completely disregard the story between him and his father, which I think is like one of the movie's strongest points. I love what they did with Wenwu, because I did a little research about Shang-Chi and about the characters, and the Fu Manchu version of the character, besides being very stereotypical, just doesn't really have a lot going on, and he's like just a typical evil Asian supervillain told through the perspective of like white writers and stuff. So I'm glad that they really gave Tony Leung a lot to work with, and he's a villain, but he's not like unforgivable, I would say. Like what he's doing, I could understand, almost like sympathize with.
Yeah, there's no point where he comes to Shang-Chi is like, or somebody is like, Shang-Chi built this with a box of scraps. Like nothing,
right.
It never happens.
Right. So I don't know. I think that the third act was okay. I think there are some issues with it. But all in all, I'm willing to forgive them, because I do like that it still kept with the movie's main theme, and they wrapped it up pretty nicely for me. I haven't seen any of Destin Daniel Cretton's other movies, if I'm being 100% honest.
Oh, you gotta see Short Term 12. That's a good.
That's the one everyone recommends to me. I do need to see that one. But
very good.
That being said, I do think that this is a very strong movie for him, because you can definitely tell that it's very important for him. Like even before the movie came out, when he would talk in interviews or talk about the movie, it sounded like he had a lot of love for this project, and you can definitely see that in the finished project for sure.
Yeah, I want to talk about Simu Liu here, who, because obviously he has a hard job in this movie. He has to he's got to compete with the charisma of Tony Leung, his dad. I mean, it works to the themes of the movie in a lot of ways, like being overshadowed by this larger than life actor. That said, I mean, I think Simu Liu, I think I'm half and half with him in this movie. My favorite aspects or my favorite parts of this movie with him are when it's him and Awkwafina goofing off, being best friends, sort of in the, like, and kind of where the movie goes with their characters toward the end too, is just sort of like leaning into the absurdity of the situation and like feeding off of them. The mode that I didn't love him in this movie is when he gets in a self-serious mode, when he gets into like my father, like all of that stuff. I mean, a lot of it just felt very, very hammed and forced. There's this whole other subplot with his sister who he basically like straight up abandoned, and the movie doesn't fully reckon with it, I think, because sequels need to be made and all of that stuff. And I do like the direction that this movie is kind of like. I like the trajectory. This movie kind of ends like 15 times, but with each different like possible branch that they could go with it, with his character in other Avengers movies or another Shang-Chi movie, I'm pretty interested in like the lore and the mythology of it all, especially, seeing, what these characters are made of now that we've gotten past all of the sort of like usual origin story setup stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you, by the way. I think that another welcome update to like the character as opposed to like how he was in the comics is that they gave him a little bit more of a personality, I want to say. Like the issue with a lot of these characters is that like they were written as stereotypes, as caricatures, and I'm glad that Marvel didn't just, do the hero's journey again and give him like just a straight serious personality the entire way through. My favorite parts were when he was just goofing off with Awkwafina too, or I cannot remember her name in the movie, even though they say it like 800 times, because every time I saw her I was like, oh, that's Awkwafina. Katie, is it Katie? Okay, yeah,
Katie,
yeah. Like every time I saw her I was like, I was expecting Simu to just say, hey Awkwafina.
Yeah, she is kind of just but that's fine,
is kind of just her. Yeah.
Can I say though, his costume in this, they started so well. Like his look and his sort of like, like with the bus brawl, it's like such a cool look, and he's such a cool looking superhero kind of dude. And then they give him this sort of like red vest, like it looks like Party City. I'm sorry, it looks terrible.
No, it definitely does not look great.
And it matches, I think, the whole Power Rangers vibe of the last hour. It's too much. It's like I'm just like, what movie is this? This doesn't have any of the texture or the color, or any of the stuff that like, the sharpness that like it's been building to. That's what's frustrating.
Yeah.
But Simu Liu is good. I mean, I was gonna say he's a cool guy in the sense that like, I was looking at his filmography before. This dude's only been in 2 other movies. He was in Women as Losers, not a great movie. I really don't like that one, but that's from this year. It's South by. But the last movie he was in before this, because I was like, well, he's been in a lot of shows. Like he was in that Awkwafina show with her. Like I think he was like in 1 episode. He's been in like, episodes of a lot of different shows. But movie wise, his last movie really was Pacific Rim, and he was an extra. And when Pacific I saw that, he goes from being an extra in Pacific Rim in 2013 to being in the lead of a Marvel movie. I thought, when's Will going to get that phone call, right? Because I think he would have gotten it already if his Where'd You Go Bernadette cameo had been approved.
If my scene hadn't been cut in that film, surely I'd be in the major leagues right now.
Well,
I could George Clooney.
I could see you as like. And I don't mean this as an insult at all, but I could definitely see you as like Marvel's next big bad, like Phase 5's.
What? Well, that's what villain? What?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Like, do you think they would just let him be Will Ashton? I don't see why.
I mean,
just my negativity is waning on the world of the MCU, and they have to convince me that
the Avengers can handle almost anything. They cannot handle critique. They just crumble as soon as the world critiques them.
As soon as somebody says Chris Pratt's the worst Chris, they all lose their minds. Yeah,
they lose their minds.
Okay, so there you go, Will. I was going to mention on the topic of theme, if I can. I did respond to like this movie does have this whole theme about like Asian and Asian American identity, and I thought it was a touching message about letting go of the past, but not forgetting about it, right? I mean, that's kind of like the heart of this movie is Shang-Chi. He's trying to escape his past, and he just kind of realizes like he never could, and like trying to there's a difference between like letting go of it and trying to become a better person, and then trying to pretend like it never happened. It's a positive message, and I think the movie is just kind of weak in terms of like the execution of that stuff. There's a big climactic fight, and it should be the culmination of all of that stuff. And it just felt a little perfunctory. It felt a little first drafty to me, not bad, but definitely like not the punched up quality that I think it could have been. And that's why I think this is, for me, one of the lesser Marvel films overall, even though it has some peak moments.
Yeah, I think I know what scene you're talking about. There's like a moment where these characters could have like some sort of resolve, some sort of closure, and it just it doesn't happen. Like it doesn't happen as strong as it should have. And that's probably like one of my biggest issues besides the CGI with the third act, is that they didn't really like I said, they wrapped it up pretty well in my eyes, but there's more of a certain, and I'm really trying to avoid spoilers because it did just come out, but there's like more of a certain character relationship that I would have loved to see more of in like sequels, and it's going to be harder now for them to do that. Hopefully that wasn't too spoiler. Sorry, guys.
I think you're good. I think you're okay. There are a lot of things I want to bring up, but I don't want to get into spoilers. There's something having to do with Iron Man 3 that gets brought here in a pretty big way. It was pretty surprising for me. I know a lot of people were not surprised. Like apparently some of the marketing revealed this, so we won't hear. But I for one was heavily charmed as a fan of Iron Man 3. It's not one of my favorites, but I certainly liked some of the choices they made in that movie for sure. They bring it back here, so that
I love the way they bring it back here. It was very charming.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a certain thing I won't get too much into because it's a pretty big spoiler, but there's something that happens to a character that like is supposed to set up like sequels and like set up like more conflict between like Shang-Chi and this other character, and it's like it's like I don't know how I felt about that. I was like I
felt hyped. I was like, yeah.
I'm hyped. I'm hyped to see it unfold. I still don't know how I feel about like how we got to that point. Like it kind of feels like a 180 to me.
We should talk about it offline because I have my own thoughts on it, I guess. But for me, that whole vibe, the sort of like underground gang vibe, like all that stuff, super cool. Like super cool style. And like I want a whole movie with that. Way less of the wuxia stuff, honestly. Because I just think the wuxia stuff is so hackneyed and so like it's not as good as like the best. And I mean, you could say the same thing about the Yakuza stuff, but it's closer, I thought. Like it's a little bit more, I don't know. And ultimately this is like an Epcot version of Chinese, action movie cinema. And so I think mileage is going to vary there. And I personally think this movie, it's getting a lot of hype and praise right now. I don't know though, like over time, how it's going to be observed, if it's really going to be one that a lot of people are going to come back to. I'm sure plenty will though, because it's Marvel. And I think that I could see myself liking it more down the line. That's happened with other Marvel movies for sure. So yeah,
I think it's definitely going to have lasting power in the same way that Black Panther did, because it is a very culturally important movie. Like it's the first Asian-led superhero film, and I think that is that is a historical landmark. In terms of like everything else with the movie, I don't know how it's going to fare once we like in this phase and people are looking back at it. I'm sure we'll get a lot of people going on Twitter and supporting it in the same way people support Ant-Man and the Wasp, which, by the way, keep doing that because that movie does not get enough credit. I really enjoyed Ant-Man and the Wasp. I don't know why people don't like it.
I do want to say, I don't think this is the first Asian-led superhero movie. I think there are a lot of them out there, just not a lot of like American ones probably, but this is the first Marvel one. So I want to be super clear about that. Yeah. So, and hey, I'm just happy that we got this instead of like an Iron Fist movie. I think that kind of worked out there. Now, Will, Adonis and I, we've been just throwing rings at each other, over here. We've gone through about 10 rounds and you haven't said much, but did you have anything like last thing to say here? Anything we might have missed?
Well, I guess a comment on some of the things you two have mentioned. I thought Awkwafina was fine. But I thought the humor in this was mostly pretty dire. Especially in the first half. Just like some really bad jokes I felt in the first half of this that I was like kind of surprised how much I didn't like the humor in this film. But I will say, without giving away, the cameo that you were referring to, I think kind of sums up my general feelings about the film, which is like when this person came on screen, I wasn't like shocked, but I was kind of like, you know, I perked up my seat a little bit, and I was like, oh, cool, like, you know, this person's here. This is kind of fun. And like, you know, like my investment in the film kind of began anew. And it's like, oh, like this is actually not just like a one scene cameo. Like they're actually kind of playing an active part in the plot. That's cool. And then that person's just sort of like around.
Yeah,
and they kind of get caught up in the busyness of the third act, and it's just like they keep cutting back to this person. I was like, oh, you're still here. That's neat, I guess. And I just felt like that kind of like summed up my whole feelings of the film, which is like for the first half, I'm like, oh, this is actually kind of a pleasant surprise. Like this is, you know, not reinventing the wheel or anything, not doing anything particularly new from Marvel, but it feels like a fresh coat. Like it feels like they're kind of, you know, there's a little bit more pep in the step. It feels like an improvement over the last few Marvel movies, with the exception of Endgame. But then as it went along, it just kind of felt like it was lost in the weeds a little bit. Like it felt like it was just kind of like it felt like it was so caught up in doing everything else that it wanted to do, that the thing that made it fun just kind of got lost in the shuffle. And I know at one point in the film there's a Kung Fu Hustle poster, and I looked it up, and I guess the director was partially inspired by Kung Fu Hustle with this movie.
Oh,
and I kept wondering, and see, that's why when I'm thinking about, I'm like, really? Like I only see like in a couple of scenes I can see it, but like, where's that zaniness in the rest of the film? Like, where's that like sense of fun?
Agreed. Yeah.
Like that's a film. Like, if you're gonna like mimic a movie, like in addition to, you know, like the Jackie Chan filmography, like yeah, like if you want to like do a big comic book martial arts movie, like those, like Jackie Chan meets Kung Fu Hustle, like that's perfect. And I felt like those influences are there, but it also feels like kind of surface level. Like it didn't feel like the movie. I didn't get as much emotionally out of the film as I guess Adonis did. And that's a shame, because I think with Tony Leung here, with the material, I think there could have been something that was really above and beyond what we get from our average Marvel movie. And I felt like it met itself a little bit short. But by and large, I think it's like a decent Marvel film. Like I'd probably put it in the middle of the pack. Like I didn't hate my time watching it, but I feel like the second half really deflates what I was enjoying so much about the first half. So not by any means like a bad time or something that I dislike, but just a bit disappointing in the broad scheme of things overall.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at. But I'll finish on a positive note. I will say that, you know, I didn't have as negative a reaction to the humor. I wasn't taken by the humor that much, but I did kind of like, though, that in the first half they sort of defied a lot of the origin movie tropes a bit. They sort of got away from a lot of the things that I think Doctor Strange suffered from. This whole like this person suddenly becomes really good at everything really quickly, and you have that sort of origin churn of like we got to fast forward through really boring stuff to get to the point where they're good enough to be like this larger than life. No, like they kind of did away with that. They kind of like moved the movie toward him being more like he's got the skills and he's got the thrills. Let's just see him do it. And I liked some of that stuff. I liked that they kind of just cut to him. You know, they did like a platonic best friend relationship. We'll see how long that lasts. But you know, with him and Awkwafina, they just let them be pals. And I was like, yeah, I guess I'd be pals with Awkwafina. I mean, I might get some heat for it, but she seems nice enough. She seems fun, and they have fun. And so I was having fun. So some of that stuff worked for me. But I think to what you're saying, it's like they're characters who are just still in the movie later on, including Awkwafina. And they do a lot to try to be like, this makes sense. Don't worry. She's still here. She can do what she can. And I was like, oh, okay, like, where are you? And then by the time we get to the end, they're kind of leading towards like, hey, no, she is like the next Avenger. And I'm like, well, sure, I guess. At least they're giving her more involvement, right, than they were with characters like, remember like Rachel McAdams' Doctor character, Doctor Strange, right? And it's just
or like
sort of
Darcy
like
Lewis before WandaVision or anything.
It's so contrived, right? The way they bring in, but no, I would disagree with you there. Where like Kat Dennings, right, in like WandaVision, like she actually has like she's a function. She like does stuff. She's like she's funny, and so like I think she's fantastic in those movies. I guess I'm alone, but
she is great. I just don't think they used her a lot before WandaVision.
Oh yeah, we agree there. I mean, in Thor: The Dark World, she's just kind of like running around with like her boyfriend or whatever.
She's the best part still, though.
To the movie's credit, I will say there's a lesser version of this film where Awkwafina is like Jar Jar Binks during the Gungan fight, where she's just like flopping around and like not really like indirectly helping. And I like that she is given some agency, but I do agree that it did strike me as a bit weird as well.
I think it's a cool. She's a good addition. I mean, she's the sort of like the Asian American character, right? She's the audience surrogate. She's the one who, you know, she kind of is like the fish out of water, which is good because, you know, otherwise it'd be a little bit boring because Shang-Chi's not like, he knows this world. He's kind of, but so him sort of like discovering the demons of his past, her sort of seeing it anew. It's fun, and I don't have a ton of complaints there. I think that they, writing wise, they came up with some decent lampshading, but at the same time, yeah, it's not the strongest thing. Let's do our predictions though. I don't know if you two have already spied the Rotten Tomatoes, but we're gonna go for it and tell the truth. If you cheated, I'll know. I won't know. But okay, we'll start with you, Will. What do you think Shang-Chi got in Rotten Tomatoes?
Critic score or audience score?
Critic score.
Critic score, I'm gonna say 89%.
Okay, what about it, you, Adonis?
I'm gonna go 1% higher and say 90.
Adonis wins. It's 92%. Neither of you got it dead on. I haven't seen this. I'll look up the cinema score too. I actually don't know what that is. But what about an audience score? Well, what's your best bet for your best guess for that?
I'm gonna say 95%.
95. What about you, Adonis?
Audience score? Oh man, I think I'm gonna agree with Will. I think it's higher than the critic score.
Well, it's higher, but you should have gone even higher, Adonis. It was 98.
98.
Audiences came out. I mean, I told you guys earlier, box office wise, this thing's slamming, and
True.
People are liking what they're seeing. So there's that. Cinema score. Okay, this is the last one. Will, what are you going to say for cinema score? What are we doing?
I'm gonna say B+. I'm kind of going low, but I'll keep that tradition.
Okay, B+, and then Adonis G.
I'm gonna go A-.
I think Adonis wins overall. It's an A.
All right.
So,
Okay.
you know, I'm surprised you went the audience score was so high. I was surprised you guys weren't like, yeah, AA+. It's doing great.
Well, cinema score is such a small percentage of audience. It's a weird audience in Las Vegas. I can never make sense of
Las
what
Vegas? I thought it was Los Angeles.
No, I think it's Vegas.
What? Really?
I think.
I don't know anything.
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
I could be totally wrong, but I thought it was Vegas.
Well, what happens in Vegas?
Yes, that's what I would like to think. Can I just say real quick, I wanted to point out the choreography from Andy Chang and Brad Allen, who I think passed away last month and gets a dedication in the film. I feel like we didn't really bring them out by name, but I wanted to give them credit because I do think the choreography in the film is quite good. Sometimes the cinematography doesn't complement it, but
William Pope did the cinematography.
Well, I think like the cinematography is good in like the first scene, and then like the bus scene, I think it works. Like the rest of it was kind of mixed as far as the cinematography and the fight scenes, but I always thought the choreography was pretty on point.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, and you know, I probably had my hopes up a little bit too high because William Pope. I mean, come on, this dude has done some of the best cinematography of the modern era. I mean, this is a guy who did all 3 Matrix movies, Spider-Man 2, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I mean, Baby Driver. I think he did Alita Battle Angel. I mean, he's one of the greats, right? But yeah, in this movie, I was a little bit like, what? And when I saw him in the credits, I was like, Bill Pope, hey, William Pope, here he is. And I was kind of like, what? Did he get? Was he there for the last?
Yeah.
Third of the movie?
I mean, if he shot Spider-Man 2, which has some of the best superhero movie fight choreography in ever at this point, just knowing like he did that and then he did this is kind of alarming.
Well, he did also do, to be fair, he did also do The Spirit, and he did also do, I think, Spider-Man 3. So it's not like...
Okay. Well, Spider-Man 3 had like the
Oh, I forgot you have a soft spot for that one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's at least one scene in Spider-Man 3 that I think trumps almost everything in this movie. So in terms of fighting,
fair enough.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say also the soundtrack is pretty great. You guys should listen to that.
It's a good list. That's a good list. But yeah, that's Shang-Chi. It's just 132 minutes long. Not just, I mean, that's over 2 hours. But yeah, I guess Adonis really, really loves it. Really, really dug it. And Will and I, we don't hate it. Just, you know, some reservations. And, yeah, check it out for yourself. You know you want to. All right, this next movie, Cinderella.
All right, guys. I'll see you later.
I already got into this a little bit earlier in the show. You know, I kind of sat you guys down. I was like, all right, here's the situation. some people observed me kind of having a moment online with this movie. I mean, quite a reaction.
In your feels.
Yeah.
And yeah, I said that I hated this movie. I was getting like texts from loved ones like, "Are you okay?" Like I'm actually not joking. Like I literally like
this is the one that did you in.
Well, because people were like, what is this movie? Like, how could it have elicited the word hate from John so many times?
How can how can they mess up this recipe? It's like, like messing up mashed potatoes. It's just like, it's a classic story.
It's Cinderella once again.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, it's one of the all-time like greatest fables ever, like for a reason. Like, shouldn't be that hard to do.
Sure, and I mean, look, they're putting look, the writing was on the wall, we should say. I mean, there were a lot of signs that pointed us to this moment, and I know for Will, he kind of like looked at this as, and Adonis too to an extent, is like, this must be like interestingly so bad. But Will, I feel like you don't know me. I mean, after almost 5 years of doing the show, I mean, for me, if something's outrageously bad, I will make that clear, right? But if I really hate something, it's because of the dullness. I mean, you were saying earlier, it's like, well, this was like kind of dull. It's like, well, yeah. That's why I hate it. That's why I was like, oh, I hate this. I don't want to be going through this anymore. I had to like literally just like sit there staring at the screen, like cycling through all my life decisions.
Yeah, I mean, but the weird thing though is that like, I think the reason why Adonis and I were excited, at least in a bad movie sort of fascination sort of way, is because describing it on paper, it does sound like this sort of like explosively bad movie. Like it just has like all the choices that it makes that are so egregiously bad. Like when I was reading David Sims reviews, just like, okay, yeah, this sounds like the sort of like movie you love to watch on Bad Movie Night because it's going out and doing these like very wacky, poor choices for a modern day Cinderella movie. But yeah, like watching it, it feels like a watered down like Disney Channel type movie, and not in like a good way as you were suggesting with your appreciation with Afterlife of the Dead or Afterlife of the Party.
Afterlife of the Dead. That's a name. Right. That's a redundancy.
Yeah.
I did see David Sims' one-word review, apocalyptic. And it's not that I disagree, but I think it's what you're saying. It's like, okay, yeah, it clearly is a sign of there's trouble in the waters. And I will just say, on paper, there were things about this movie as I was watching it where I was like, you know what? Yeah, Cinderella, there are things you can do to the story to freshen it up a little bit, maybe put in a little bit of like, she has a different agenda for going to the ball. Let's set this thing up. Let's talk about it. Let's go in with an open mind, as open as we can make it. So this was originally going to be a Sony movie. I kind of mentioned the writing with like some of the red flags, the writing on the wall, the fact that this was Sony, it was going to be Sony theatrical, but then it was going to, straight to Amazon streaming. And a lot of us were kind of like, well, you know what? It's pandemic. That's not necessarily a sign of quality. That's like, hey, like maybe they just see something in this, from the marketing, from what I can tell, like I just saw posters and stuff. I was like, this kind of does look like a ABC, like one night only kind of like TV event kind of thing. So I could buy that. I could buy them being like, yeah, let's put it on Amazon. People will watch it.
I mean, at its best, it could seem like another like Brandy's Cinderella sort of thing.
Yeah.
But at its worst, it seems like it could be like Geppetto starring Drew Carey.
Well, we'll see where they landed. And they had the pedigree for this thing. I mean, this is one of those things where you're watching it and you're like, they really got people to be in this, because they were expecting this to be like, I think like a holiday, Christmas time, Thanksgiving, like 4-quadrant musical hit. I mean, they were going for like Greatest Showman kind of, show-stopping quality here, at least in the pre-production. I mean, they got a director who can deliver. They got Kay Cannon, who, I've been pretty hit or miss with Kay Cannon. I mean, I think like I know her more for her writing. Her first film was Blockers,
which I liked.
Blockers did pretty well. I was one of the naysayers though. That was a big box office hit, and I was like, you know what, Blockers is cool. Hey, I gave it a pass. I was like, yeah, go check it out. You'll probably like it. R-rated comedy about how John Cena is funny as a dad.
Sure.
Funny that we brought it up last week too.
Yes.
Among other things. Yeah. I mean, I think he and his daughter in the movie, played by the wonderful Geraldine Viswanathan, to me, they're the more like memorable characters in that movie. The other ones not as much, but
sure.
Hey,
Catherine Newton. I mean, like Leslie Mann.
I kind of remember her and Leslie Mann. Ike Barinholtz, I think, was in it too. I don't know. They kind of like fade in the background for me a little bit compared to Cena and Viswanathan, but
Well, I mean, I'll cut some slack. I think Kay Cannon actually did a good job with that, and I'm not the biggest Kay Cannon fan. I'm pretty on record being like I'm not a fan of the Pitch Perfect movies. I'm not quite sure what else she's involved with, but Blockers surprised me, and I felt New Girl, the show New Girl.
Yeah, she wrote a bunch of it, and
okay, I haven't watched enough of it to have an opinion on the show, I'll admit, but yeah, I mean, I think Blockers it could have been really, really bad. Like that's the type of film like you hear about on paper. I'm like, I don't know about this, but in execution, I felt it was funny, but it was also pretty sweet, and the performances were good. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe Kate Cannon has finally figured it out, in my view. And I think that's why when they announced the Cinderella movie, it's like, I don't know. I mean, how many Cinderella movies we got? The Kenneth Branagh one just came out not too long ago, and it was actually pretty good. So it's like, do we really need a new Cinderella? And they're like, no. You don't understand. This isn't just Cinderella again. It's a modernized Cinderella.
Yeah, so we should say, so James Corden, who's in the movie, came to Columbia Pictures, I think, right? And he was like, and he produces the film with a few other people. This is back in 2019. So he's like, let's do Cinderella. We'll do a musical retelling.
Let's get loud.
Let's do something different with it. Let's girl boss this thing. Okay? Now, to me, it makes sense. Like the mathematical formula, they go to Kate Cannon, who in addition to writing episodes of New Girl, who in addition to writing Pitch Perfect and doing Blockers, she's also the creator and writer of the show Girl Boss on Netflix. Only has 6 episodes. The wonderful Britt Robertson was in the Not So Wonderful show back in 2017. It's terrible. Girl Boss, one of the worst Netflix shows of that year, if I recall.
Oh, wow.
But they bring her in and they're like, I mean, it's one of the few Netflix movies that got canceled. I mean,
Netflix shows.
Netflix shows. Thank you. But so she comes in and they're like, you know how to do this thing. You know how to sort of like reinterpret, like, sort of like do a movie for the modern woman. And a lot of people want that. They want that sort of like fresh take. Like, let's take a character like Cinderella, who in the past has just sort of been in this like very tropey zone. And I get the formula. I mean, it's Kate Cannon. She's written some very interesting, women characters and men characters, of course.
Sure.
But specific to Cinderella, like I see it. I see the math, the producers kind of like throwing dice onto the table and being like, this is going to be Snake Eyes.
Sure.
And holy cow, that did not work out as intended.
Yeah, I mean, before we get ahead of ourselves, I want to make one thing clear, which is that I'm not against the idea of like quote unquote girl bossing Cinderella. I think there's a way you can do this. I think it's a bad idea in principle, but I think there's a way you can do it that is funny and fresh. And similar to like Blockers, it's just like on paper, I see that concept. I'm like, I don't know. It just seems like it could be kind of icky and like trite. And, I'm kind of wanted to be on her. I'm trying to be as nice as possible here because I think there's a version of this movie. It on principle, you can do this and make it work, but you have to have really clever writing. You have to like really be self-aware without like overdoing it and not just rely on the girl boss aspect solely. Like just the idea of like reinventing the wheel by like giving it a new fresh coat of paint. Like you kind of have to do you got to do a little bit more legwork, I think, to make that concept work. And I think the movie itself is just kind of satisfied with just doing like the baseline, just like, we acknowledge like this is something that happened in the original Cinderella, but we're not that movie. We're different. Like we're doing something a little bit winking, and that's where I think the trouble comes in with this film.
Not all those decisions, like not all those plot turns, I thought were bad. There were things in this where I was like, on paper, sure. Like specifically what they do with like the prince character and his sort of like setup. I'm kind of like, yeah, maybe the prince just sort of like, maybe he's like a prince from like Gossip Girl. Dude's got a trust fund and dude just wants to like get around. I mean, like, yeah, sure. Like do that with Cinderella. Like there's an avenue there. And I want to be super clear about something, right? Because when people hear girl boss, they define it in different ways, right?
Right.
To me, to what maybe we do agree on this, Will. I think it's the term that's maybe like tripping me up. There is a way to do a version of Cinderella where, look, she's just here. She just wants to start a business. She's like, she started up from nothing. Now she's here. There's a way to do that. There's a way to sort of like capture this sort of like, she has her own ambitions. She has her own goals. She has her own agency. That's not girl boss in and of itself. Girl boss is sort of like, this idea of like the woman character or any character in general, because it's something that they're kind of like grafting from like this, like, male character trope that's been around for too long, where it's celebrated and then it's like applauded to sort of like rise up and make tons of money and to be this sort of like super capitalist, king or queen or whatever. And it's like it kind of jives with this movie's like obsession with royalty too. It kind of is like leaning into like it wants to be subversive, but like it's still like dancing around with all these really boring fairy tale sort of qualities that it's not subversive about. And to me, it rings as so disingenuous. It's like if nothing else, like the whole movie is dull, and I think the message is pretty just like so misguided in terms of like what is aspirational for any of these characters. And like the aspirational is like the character who rules over everybody gets to do it, and the only reason she couldn't do it before is because the patriarchy was holding her down, and instead of realizing that like maybe ruling over a bunch of people is not great, and you know what, it's fine. Like I don't want to make it sound like a movie's got to have like perfect values or anything to be good, but it's just like it's so proud of itself and it's so smug that it just rubs me the wrong way. Even I could disagree with the movie's message, but like the way it comes about is the issue for me.
Yeah, so we're on the same page because that's where I'm at. It's just like if you really want to reinvent the wheel, I guess, or like try to do a newish take on Cinderella, if you do the legwork, sure. I mean, I'm not opposed to that on principle, but the movie, like you said, it has this sort of indulgence where like it feels like, oh, like they pat themselves on the back just for coming up with this concept. And they're just like, well, we don't need to do anything else. Like we're already struck gold. We just got to ride this, train to the station and just, collect our awards at the end. And it just feels like not even like to the point where they don't even really write original songs. Most of them are just, renditions of famous pop songs, which
I just assumed they were all covers because I got to the point where it's like, I might just not have ever heard of this song. It is so bad that it could be anything.
Yeah.
It could be original. I mean, there were a couple where I was like, this probably is original because I don't imagine any self-respecting musical artist would put themselves through this without a paycheck from Sony. So
the cynic in me assumes they have one original song because they want that one to get the Oscar nomination.
Yeah, there you go. That's the Greatest Showman effect.
Yes, exactly.
I imagine though, because we're railing, there's a lot of stuff to get to here. There's the Camila Cabello, there's the cast in general. There's more to say about the music, but I know I see Adonis in the corner. He's kind of hugging his signed poster of Cinderella, tears through his eyes. Yes. Just kind of like Kate Cannon's signature. Anything is possible. XOXO.
Guys, I auditioned twice to be Cinderella, and
the Cinderella. All right.
I thought it's time we sort of we changed the gender norms a bit, but I guess Kate Cannon just
I would just
about
put you
that.
in the Minnie Driver role, me personally.
I wanted to be I didn't want to be typecast. If I get one Minnie Driver role, I'm in Minnie Driver roles the rest of my career.
I just imagine if Pierce Brosnan as a king is going to listen to anybody, it's Adonis.
When he, okay. I'm assuming I'm gonna start talking about the movie. I'm sorry if I cry a little bit. It's a very hard thing to get through. Can I start actually with the tweet that inspired me to even watch the movie? It's by you, John. Is that okay?
I was gonna say, is it not? It's not the one where like James Corden and company stopped LA traffic to dress in costumes.
I thought I was gonna say. It's from Amazon Prime, and it says, see Cinderella, available exclusively on Amazon Prime Friday.
You could literally freeze frame that tweet video where James Corden is literally humping the air toward this pedestrian who is just, not pedestrian, they're in their car. They could have run over them at any point.
I like to imagine who the people are in the car. Like somebody's like about to give birth. And they're just like, we're almost at the hospital, honey. Don't worry. We're almost there. Oh, God. What's this? Is there some sort of traffic jam?
Is that Shawn Mendes' girlfriend? What?
Is that James Corden? And no, that tweet, honestly, that was typical James Corden behavior for me. I saw that and I was like, yeah, I saw his name and what was going on. I was like, that makes sense. Okay. So, no, the tweet that got me to finally check the movie out, because I had heard about it, I did a little research, but I was like, this probably isn't for me, because I'm not a huge Cinderella fan. I saw the original and I saw the 2015 one. I've seen like a Cinderella story, but it's not like I was itching for a new Cinderella, like, especially because before I'd seen it, I thought it was just going to be the same old tired tale, and now I'm kind of wishing it was. So the tweet that finally made me want to see it, it's by John Negroni. At John Negroni says, I hated the new Cinderella. Hated it. Imagine if the biggest fan of Glee did a Cinderella retelling. I was in already. That was it right there. And then you continued with, it's peak girl boss pandering. You followed up in a second tweet calling it, what if Cinderella, but capitalist AF queen?
They literally have a Yas Queen quote in this movie. What do you want from me?
Those were terms. See, that was before I saw the movie. So those were terms I wasn't expecting to see attached to Cinderella starring Camila Cabello. It's a very hard name to say.
Camila Cabello, the wonderful Camila Cabello. I was teasing her a little bit before, but she's a treasure.
Oh yeah,
she rules.
She's great. This movie did her a complete disservice. There are a lot of shots in this movie
Her
where
first
I can
film
tell.
role, I think, right?
Oh,
I don't think
yeah.
she's ever been in a film before, and some people take the cheap shot and they're like, yeah, it shows, and I'm like, you know what? Give her another project. She deserves it.
Yeah, first of all, it's her first movie, and you can really tell that there were just a lot of moments where they just said action and didn't give her a lot to work with. Like it's very clear that it's not really indicative of what she can become as an actor. So I watched the movie, immediately got into the first song. Billy Porter comes on and narrates. He plays the fabulous godmother. They play Rhythm Nation, like a mix of Rhythm Nation, and it took everything in my power not to turn it off right then and there. So I was like, you know what? If I'm going to watch this, I'm going to tweet about it. And that one or two tweets ended up becoming like a whole thread where I kind of just laid into this movie. Because I agree with you, John. I also hate ×4 this movie for so many reasons. The message is so misguided to me that I'm still not sure what exactly it is they're trying to tell me. Like the Cinderella wanting to have her own business, that's fine. I think that's a really great change in character, especially because, we're in this age where we're taking these role models who used to be so gung-ho about like, oh, get married young. You're basically what Idina Menzel's character is saying. You have to find a prince and you have to support your family, and this is your role. And Cinderella's like, no, I'm not about that. I want to have my own business. But she doesn't really. Her intentions are pretty misguided. Like, she says one thing and does another, and it takes almost no time for that to happen. And that happens with a lot of characters. And there are two character arcs in particular with these two just capitalist representations of like this hierarchy, and it's like trying to say, yeah, they were bad people and they did bad things, but it's okay because we forgive them, and all they needed was a stern talking to. Like, that's all it takes to dismantle the patriarchy. Just tell them, hey, the patriarchy's not good. Don't do that. And then, oh, sorry, my bad. Feminism. And it's like, it's so misguided and kind of dangerous. It's
the whole thing is
basic, yeah. And
basics, yeah.
Yeah.
Because can I give my overall, because here's the thing. We've said it many times. We should keep stressing it. It's not like you can't have a powerful, a woman character with agency. The same reason that, like, we've gotten, male characters with so much agency for so long, that the problem to me is that, like, the way the writing is so pandering to that fact, right? Instead of treating her like a human being, which is what people actually want, like, why does she want to start a business? The movie doesn't really get to that. Like, right. The whole thing of her wanting to start a business is because she wants to start a business, and the idea of owning a business as a woman is the reason any woman would want to own a bit. No, people want to own business because they want to make money. They want to take care of their family because they have life goals. They have values. They have a worldview. They're a person. And this movie is like, no, there's just the only value to, starting something, creating something is just doing it in the first place so you can make money and join the economy like the men. And it's like, that is just so no. It's just so against, I think, what real people do.
Well, it just feels like you said before, it's pandering because it feels like, in their view, like, if we just make it that Cinderella it's not only that she wants to find a prince, but she wants to be a businesswoman, they're like, that's progressive enough. Like, we already got the check mark for progressive.
Exactly.
We've did it, team. And that's what feels like pandering. It's just like, yeah, like if the premise of the film isn't inherently flawed if you build beyond that, But it feels like I said before, they feel like, oh, we struck gold with this. We're going to have Cinderella want to be a businesswoman. She wears a suit at one point. The fairy godmother is actually Billy Porter. And they just were like rubbing their hands being like, yes, we figured it out. We did. We cracked the code.
Meanwhile, like James Corden is laughing in the corner, knowing what he's doing. The agent of chaos that he is. Like, he knows. He's just like, they're actually going to do this. He's literally writing lines into the script of like the mouse tail being a penis. Like, he's doing that as a prank.
Oh,
like,
can we talk about that for a bit?
This.
Just specifically that part?
I mean, yes, because it's like, because that implies a sort of faulty awareness of anatomy that confounds
Thank you.
me.
Oh my gosh. I wanted to tweet about it, but I was like, I'm not giving James Corden the satisfaction of tweeting about a mouse penis. But James, did
James Corden pee out of his tail before?
Well, I don't want to talk about that.
I want to let's dive. I want to really dive into this.
I just don't understand whenever we watch these movies, Will always like gravitates toward the plight of like one animal and they're like confused place in this world.
And Shang-Chi, I did not bring up once the little faceless
because I thought because if it was a spoiler thing, otherwise you might have.
Oh, Morse isn't a spoiler. There's like merchandise everywhere.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say Morse isn't a spoiler inherently. If I said who Morris's friend was, that'd be a spoiler.
That'd be a spoiler.
Yeah.
We haven't talked enough about how the music in this, legitimately like letters of apology should be written to all the original artists, particularly every member of Queen. However, if there are trials and if there's jail time, the Queen estate, if they signed off on this, I don't blame them 100%. They probably just didn't listen to the final version, but they should have never let this happen.
I mean, I have to give them very, very small credit that at no point did they have Cinderella and the evil stepsisters get together and sing Single Ladies. That was something I was expecting all the way through, and that never happened.
They had to choose between that and like What a Man / Seven Nation Army, and clearly that mashup was way more important.
Yeah, I got some real Rock of Ages vibe from that scene, I'll admit.
Ooh,
I definitely was for the first time thinking to myself, well, maybe my undying love of Moulin Rouge was a mistake. Maybe I have enabled something
finally
here. As much as that movie is important to me, I feel like it's done more harm than good.
Yes.
Let's go there.
Yes.
Because we have this movie, and I was feeling the same thing about Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia, now there is a movie.
Here we go again.
Oh, here we go again.
Here we go again.
Those movies are what this movie, Cinderella wishes. It had an ounce of the heart, passion, and flair of the Mamma Mia movies. Hashtag ABBA is back, reunited, feels so good. That said, this movie, I knew that this movie had changed me for the worse in a permanent fashion when, we've gone through this whole thing where at no point do we really get a sense that Ella or Cinderella, because they do that whole thing, where Ella is like, I do want love too. Like I want to start a business, but I also like, I want to get hit by Cupid's arrow. At no point though does she have any sort of like love spark. And the movie introduces the object of her would-be affection, played by Nicholas Galitzine, who is just horrendous in this movie. And I
Shawn Mendes.
Could have just been a wet blanket and would have had just the same amount of charisma as this guy has.
I do not know what happened there. Yeah, no energy. And they have like these flirty scenes. And I was like, I am surprised that she doesn't just walk away slowly from this man. It was very surprising to me. I wish that they should have gotten somebody like James A. Caster is in this movie. Funny comedian. I was thinking to myself, he should have been the prince. This sort of like awkward kind of comedian sort of character who doesn't have like the stereotypical good looks. That's like the vibe of this movie. Like let him be the prince. And then you have something a little bit more there. You have like the personality there. You have the sort of like, oh, it's real chemistry between these two. Instead, it's like they Ed Sheeran the thing. And
literally,
it's such and that's what I mean. Like literally two characters need to have a conversation, and the rules of musicals have survived this long for a reason. The rules of musical, like expressing what you can't say, and this movie bastardizes that with using Ed Sheeran, and I shouldn't be surprised what they do with this, the way that they sort of like create and contrive obstacles for these characters, and then use some of the most hokey modern American pop songs to just twist that nail in our back and make us suffer. It's criminal.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a point in the movie where I almost could see the prince and Cinderella just being friends. And I was like, that'd be an interesting way to take this if you just made it so that she didn't marry the prince and instead, like, you know, they became friends and he's like, hey, I'm rich. You want to start a business? I can help you. And I almost wish they would have done that because the chemistry between these two characters is just not there at all. And
They're cousins. Like, he's the creepy cousin. She's like, does my cousin have a crush on me? I kind of need to keep an eye on
has more chemistry with Billy Porter than she does with the prince.
Oh, yeah.
I feel. I mean, yeah.
By the way, that there's no great song in this movie, but I will say that was the only time, for that, like, minute and a half, that was the only time where it really felt like the actor was like happy that they were singing a song in Cinderella, and I appreciated that.
I mean, I have nothing. I mean, Billy Porter is a Pittsburgh native, and so I'm very happy for his success, and I'm excited that Billy Porter keeps being in things. And I think he's the only person in this movie that doesn't embarrass themselves.
He gave it his all. He was like, "I know what I'm in."
I think he's having fun. I think he's aware that the movie is kind of kitschy and dumb, and he's just like, "I'm just gonna make the most of it. I have like 3 scenes.
Owned it.
Let me just have fun."
Right.
Yeah.
I think what sums it up for me is like this movie mashes up 2 eras that are very embarrassing and unfortunate for the medium of music. It's the one era. On one end, we have the Glee era. This, you know, once promising for a very limited amount of time era of television where you could have covers of songs, but you could find sort of like an emotional journey, you know, literally and figuratively, through these like sort of misfit characters doing something that's not typically seen as popular or you know, aspirational, but you know, it's just it's just a bunch of high school kids getting together and singing their hearts out. That was what Glee started as. What Glee became was this like corporate mishmash of just the absolute, you know, Obama era pandering to this sort of like, I don't know, just this really dull, wet blanket, I think you said, Will, of that one guy. But I think it applies here too, of just what entertainment can be. And that it shines through the music, right? And then the other end of that, they merge it with TikTok. This is the time of TikTok where people just kind of get up and they sing for a few, you know, they dance or they sing, they do something like really silly. And it's like so quick and it's so like, we have to say something edgy. We have to say something sort of, you know, just like these little bites of, you know, these little bursts of entertainment. And that's what this movie is. It's like taking the worst of both of those things and just like mushing them together. And I reject all of it.
Yeah. I mean, as I've noted before, I'm not a fan of jukebox musicals by design. So maybe I went into this film slightly biased, but I will give credit. I mean, I did like the second Mamma Mia fine, but I will give credit to both Moulin Rouge and the first Mamma Mia in that they're not my thing, but they're shameless about what they are. And it's just like Meryl Streep, just like, hey, look, I've won at that point 2 Oscars. I'm just going to have fun. I'm just going to be in a big, broad musical and goof it up with Pierce Brosnan. And same with, you know, Moulin Rouge. It's just like Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman. They're having fun singing songs they like. This movie, there's something so inherently cynical about every decision that they make that doesn't even seem like they're having fun making this movie, but it's like constantly like shaking you like by the shoulders and be like, have fun, we're singing, we're having fun, but it doesn't feel like anyone involved is enjoying themselves. And as you mentioned, it's a Sony production, and I kind of got the vibe throughout the film that you remember when the Sony emails leaked and there was like that one email there was that one email where the one Sony executive was like, Spider-Man should listen to EDM music and like save the day using his Snapchat filter or whatever. And like, it was just like the most comically egregious, like Sony exec is out of touch with reality and the youth vibe.
Peter Parker AirPods ?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I got the sense that that executive, I don't know if it was a male or a woman. They
probably sent an email. Yep. They probably sent an email that was like, well, hold on. What if Cinderella really wanted to go to the ball so she could make connections?
Yeah.
so she could network and add people on LinkedIn.
Ed Sheeran question mark? Rat tail penis question mark? But yeah, I mean, it just like Donis, you were mentioning before, I just get the sense that like it has like this sort of like split brain mentality where it's just like we want to be progressive, we don't want to just do Cinderella again, but it's also like, but we have to do this because it's Cinderella. She has to be with the prince, and it's like if they played up the idea like they don't have chemistry because Cinderella has to realize that like, oh, I don't have to follow expectations and marry the prince. Like, we don't have anything in common. We can't relate. Like, I'm going to follow my business pursuits. Like, that's fine. You can do the idea, but don't introduce those ideas and then be like, oh, I got to be with the prince because it's Cinderella. It's just like, that's, I think, the core issue I have with this movie is that it never really makes a firm decision what it wants to be. And like you were saying, John, it just feels like it's also pandering and being smug at the same time. It just becomes a deeply cynical and very unpleasant movie experience by the end.
Hey, wait, though. One good thing came out of this movie. I think it vindicated me and it vindicated Adonis Gonzalez. You know why?
Why?
Why is that?
We both were right about Cruella. There you go.
Why is that?
Oh, just that Cruella is the good version of this movie.
They could both not be great.
Nah, that's not true. Cruella owns.
I did enjoy Cruella a lot more than I was expecting. I finally saw that it was free on Disney Plus, and I watched it and I was like, oh wow, okay. This is a pretty good movie. It's a fun movie.
Yeah. Will, I think Will didn't actually watch it, and he just sort of.
Oh, I saw it. I saw it in theaters. I'll agree that the mediocre Cruella is better than the dog shit Cinderella movie.
I think you mean the empowering, epic 2021 fan favorite Cruella is meteors, ahead of Cinderella 2021.
Light years. I will say, are we giving like final thoughts?
Yeah, we'll finish out with, you can give the last word, Adonis. Please do.
All right. Okay. I'll just say honestly, I agree with what we've been saying. There were a lot of things on paper that could have made this movie way better than it was. Absolutely terrible execution all the way around. I really don't feel like I was part of the Rhythm Nation with this one, and I'm hoping that God forbid, if there's another one of these, if they try to do it with I don't know, Snow White or something, they learn from this one. I really don't have much else to say, but besides that, I won't get too much into it, but I really hate what they did with Idina Menzel's character. A lot. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't want to say too much because then I'm going to get inspired to write a review, and I just don't want to talk about this movie anymore.
I'm sorry, but I have two last things. I know I said last word, but you brought up Idina Menzel. I'm starting to get sick of her singing voice. Frozen did this. I'm sorry, but they're doing it whenever she does that. Like what? Like no, please stop.
I feel like they tell her.
It was great and wicked.
I feel like it's in her contract that she has to do that.
Yeah, she's got to, even though they know there's not going to be a let it go in this, they're like, well, Idina, I mean, it happened once, so we got to give you at least one number, so.
Yeah. I just think it's funny that James Corden is on a warpath to be in the most embarrassing musical ever at this point.
That was the last thing I was going to say. Will,
really
James Corden
himself.
Is not the worst person in this movie. And he actually, dang it, he had a couple of lines that were funny.
I can't get behind you with the funny bit.
He did.
I don't know about that.
Only when he was a mouse, not when he was the human character. But okay, that's Cinderella, 113 minutes long. But what about its Rotten Tomato score? What about that? So this thing doesn't have a cinema score since it wasn't in theaters. Or I think it was in maybe some theaters,
yeah, it was
but not
in select
enough.
Theaters. Yeah.
Right. But Will, what are you gonna guess for Rotten Tomatoes?
I'm a little off my game today, so my confidence isn't quite there. But my gut says 32%.
It's a 32 from Will. What about AG?
I'm trying to factor in the people who are going to defend this movie because they're going to be there. I'm going to give it a 28%.
Well, a little closer. It's 43%.
43.
Wow.
43 out of 92 reviews. And audience score, Will, I'm so sorry.
Oh,
What do you think?
audience score, it has to be lower, right? I'm gonna say 20%.
And Adonis?
That was going to be my guess as well.
75%.
There's absolutely no way.
We have crossed into another realm. And I'm scared. I'm scared of this
those
new
are
reality.
bots?
They're verified ratings, it looks like.
All right.
So
I can see that.
Whatever conspiracy, whatever helps you sleep at night.
Yes, whatever gets you through the pandemic.
I've had plenty of conversations with friends and family members where I just absolutely hated a movie, and they're like, "Yeah, but it's fun to watch with your kids," and I'm like,
They're not really watching it. They're folding laundry. All the kids are like yelling and screaming and throwing Cheerios at the TV.
Oh,
it was fun.
prayers for all the parents dealing with the renditions of the covers in Cinderella right now.
I just imagine like a mom like with headphones in, folding a laundry, smiling. You see upstairs like kids are crying, like holding their hair, and you're like, why does James Corden keep talking about his tail?
What does he mean?
Mom, please.
All right, that's Cinderella. Okay, our last movie of the week here is Worth. Worth is a biographical film. It came out in 2020, premiered at Sundance. They kind of waited on it. I think that they were kind of waiting to release it around September 11th, but of course the pandemic last year, so it didn't come out quite yet. And I think it's because I think it premiered actually it was announced in 2018, if I recall. And I think it did premiere in Sundance. I was like questioning myself there, but no, I think we're good. Came out at Sundance. It's just now getting its limited release. And it got a limited release on the 3rd, and then it hit Netflix around the same time. So you can watch it right now. And I think it kind of originally was supposed to be like, an awards contender for Netflix. It was going to be like a spotlight kind of thing, like a political sort of, that sort of like Sundance-y political, like The Report or something like that. I don't think it got a lot of traction with people though. Didn't really hit the festival circuit, which I think is a shame. There's some really good performances in this. I mean, this movie is like dripping with Oscar bait. Our two main leads here are Michael Keaton and Stanley Tucci. We also have Amy Ryan and quite a few others. But this movie, as I mentioned before, it's related to September 11th. It takes place sort of like before, during, and mostly after, like the aftermath of September 11th. For those of you who don't know, like if you're listening around the world, September 11th in America, 9/11, that was the day in 2001 where the World Trade Centers or the Twin Towers were attacked by terrorists, and the Pentagon as well. And obviously it was a huge moment in American history. We're not celebrating, but remembering it 20 years later, because it's 2021 now. And this movie they're kind of timing it, I think, on purpose in that way. It's about a group of lawyers who pro bono are trying to essentially get a bunch of people to sign up for the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund. It's something that if you are a person who lost a loved one, like a spouse, a child, a parent, or something like that, you agree to take a payout from the government, Congress passed, an agreement to not sue the airline industry. So they were very, very concerned, like right after 9/11, that if all of these victims, there's thousands, if all these victims sue the airlines for what happened, for what happened in this terrorist attack happening, then it could crash the entire economy. Because the airline industry is so tied economically to the American economy, essentially it would be years, maybe decades of litigation that would cause the airlines to lose, basically become defunct. And I have a lot of my own questions about, the sort of like predictions there, like what really was going on there. This movie doesn't fully examine, I think, the sort of like how certain they were that would happen, and the money that the airline industries have these days, especially now that we're watching this like after the pandemic, and we're seeing just the sort of shadiness between like the airline lobby and like the American government and everything. This movie kind of touches on it, but not super deep. But you're supposed to be on the side of the lawyers. They're like, we got to sign up these people. We got to save the economy. We've got 2 years. It kind of starts off as like a heist almost, of like, we got to plan together. We got to get this many people to sign up. We're doing this for free. Then over the course of the movie, they just get bulldozed by the emotion of the people who lost loved ones, the arbitrariness of the bureaucracy, the like sort of like heartlessness of this like formula they created. And man, Michael Keaton and Stanley Tucci in this are powerhouses. And I think that they're just like this sort of like dueling rivalry, but then also this sort of like, reluctant sort of like partnership of minds that I thought was really, really fascinating. I saw this in Sundance. I really dug it. I gave it a good grade there. And, I rewatched it, and I maintain, I think this is a really solid film. It does kind of strike me as like the sort of typical Oscar season movie, not one of the best of the year or anything, but, certainly one that will definitely make a lot of people, give a lot of people something to chew on if they watch it on Netflix. But what did you think of Worth, Will? Because you just saw this for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I think solid is the word. I had pretty high expectations for this, not only based on your recommendation, but because, like you mentioned, it is a movie where Michael Keaton and Stanley Tucci talk about serious things for 2 hours, which is my bag, especially Michael Keaton. I love him, and I think he's a tremendous actor. Another Pittsburgh native that I'm quite proud of. But yeah, I mean, I think when I was watching this, I kept thinking, like, if this came out in 2006, and this is not indicative of the quality, this is more just like a comment on where we are with these type of movies culturally. If this movie came out in like 2006, it would have been released by Focus Features, and it probably would have gotten like 2 Golden Globe Awards and like 4 Oscar nominations.
Yep. I mean, heck, even in like 2015, that's when Spotlight, like I think that was kind of like the tail end of that era, collecting awards pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
The Post represents like when that sort of like that went dry.
Right. And now this is the sort of film that like it gets thrown to Netflix with little to no fanfare, and it'll probably be forgotten about, broadly speaking, in like a month. Unless
it gets the Trial of Chicago 7 treatment, though, right? I mean, the difference is that there was a narrative with that film, with the Aaron Sorkin. This is directed by Sarah Colangelo.
Right.
So definitely doesn't have that same like box office or that sort of marketing narrative that they had for the Oscar campaign. So,
well, I mean, I'm assuming they're releasing it now because they want to correlate with the 20th anniversary of 9/11, yes. But also I get the sense that like just the way they released the film and all that, not even, I don't think, giving it any sort of theatrical release, that they're not really looking at this as a awards contender. Like you mentioned before, they've been sitting on this movie for almost 2 years. And, it just doesn't really seem like they had a lot of confidence or faith in it. And that's a shame, because I think by and large, it is a pretty good film. Like, I don't love it, unfortunately, as much as you do. I think the awards bait quality of it does kind of rub me the wrong way, because it is going for something that's a little bit more quieter and character focused, that like the score of the movie didn't really quite work for me. And some of the like bigger, more dramatic moments didn't quite hit as hard. But I think when it is quieter and more character focused, especially during the testimonial scenes, I think this movie really does sing. And I also think Michael Keaton is good, but I think Stanley Tucci is quite great in this. And I also think Amy Ryan is very good. And I get the sense that she kind of gets overshadowed compared to those two performances, which is a shame, because I think she's also a tremendous actress. And I think when she is given time to shine in this film, she's quite good. And I think of the 3 films that we're talking about, certainly it's my favorite. Though it didn't hit me, I think, emotionally quite as hard as I was hoping it would. And I'm still kind of trying to figure out why exactly that was.
Oh, difficult topic. So, yeah, I certainly can understand, some hesitancy with this movie. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. Adonis Gonzalez, you just watched Worth as well. So what was it worth to you?
I really enjoyed it. It is a very hard topic, and I'm actually kind of in the same boat as Will. I'm still trying to determine how heavy it really hit me, because I did look at a couple reviews after I watched the movie, and it doesn't seem like it hit as hard as it was going for, especially with the source material. But I don't know, the testimony scenes were very, very, very hard for me. Like they were very well directed. It almost felt like I had to look this up, because I was like, are some of these people who actually experienced this and they had them come on as extras? I don't know. I couldn't find anything about that. I think they are just extras, but they were very well done. Michael Keaton does a great job playing this lawyer character who's kind of in the middle of all this, like this philosophical / economical discussion about the worth of life and this huge tragedy that nobody could have prepared for, like absolutely no one. there's not enough Tucci for me, if I'm being honest, because I think he was great, but I don't think that he was in the movie as much as I was expecting him to be. But when he did show up in the movie, I mean, he stole the show every time, and that's something that's I feel is very hard to do when you're working alongside Michael Keaton. Like when Michael Keaton's at his best, he's usually the show stealer, but Stanley Tucci is an incredible actor. He always envelops himself in his roles. I really enjoyed it. I don't know why it didn't hit me as hard as I feel it should have, and I can't really give like a definitive answer. I guess I would say it is because it does kind of lean a little heavy into the Oscar bait theme a few times, whereas I don't know. It felt like it could have got a little more personal, I guess, if that makes sense. But I don't think it was like a weak movie in any sense of the word. I think it's a very strong, heavy contender for the Oscars, and I think that Keaton and Tucci and Amy Ryan do their absolute best in this movie. Like they're incredible actors. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely agree with Will. It didn't hit me as hard as I feel it should have, but I can't really explain why it didn't.
Well, my theory for that, and I do want to start by saying, the actors that I think you're thinking of, Adana, is like they're all like actors. Like the main ones with a lot of speaking lines. The Donatos are played by like I think one of them, Laura Bernani, is like a really really acclaimed like theater stage performer.
I could tell she was an actor for sure.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention one of them is Gail Rankin, who is just last year was in one of my favorite films, and she gave a great performance in that as well, The Climb. And she was also in like Her Smell and The Great Showman.
Oh, that's
Glow
right.
And Meyerowitz Stories and stuff, and she's great in this as well.
I thought I recognized her.
There are like most of those testimonials are from character actors, kind of giving like their like big monologue scene. But I'm pretty sure almost all of them are actors, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty
much, yeah. I don't know if they used any like if they had anybody who like lived through it. I would be surprised, but I guess it's possible.
And I think someone might have gotten cut because unless I missed it, like Mark Maron was credited, but I don't remember seeing him in the film. I don't know if he was like one of the testimonials that got cut.
I don't know. Yeah, because I don't remember him in the movie, like the Sundance version. So I don't know if that. But I do remember seeing. Yeah, he was credited, and yeah. But that said, I think my theory for why I think this movie, I kind of in the same boat. I think that it starts off really strong, and I think this movie has really good structure, really good trajectory, and it's going in the right direction. And it kind of just starts off with this very like avant-garde question that's kind of off-putting, but also sort of like comforting in the sort of like simplicity and binariness of it. And it's like, what is a human life worth? And this movie is like very upfront about Kenneth Feinberg, our main character played by Michael Keaton. He has a very specific philosophy about what the answer to this question. He's like a number, he's got that accent, and he has this like worldview of life that boils down to numbers. And, it comes down to like a negotiation. It comes down to it's worth what it's worth, and it's not necessarily fair, but there's like this sort of coldness to it. And the movie is driving away from that the entire time, right?
There's like, this movie could have went the entirely opposite direction with Ken Feinberg, with Michael Keaton's character. And I'm glad that it didn't, because like it could have very easily just made him like a really terrible person. He could have been Lee Quinn, who, and the actor's name is escaping me right now, but that's the character's name, who's pretty much like
Tate Donovan.
Tate Donovan, thank you. He could have been Tate Donovan's character. He could have been like this cold, calculating, and in the beginning, in a lot of ways, he was. But even at the beginning, I could see that what they were trying to do with this character was kind of show that he's in a very precarious position. He's in a very unexpected position, one that isn't of the norm, even for the career that he's in, which typically deals in death, in like things that other people wouldn't really want to deal with. And I'm glad that even though they established that he's not like the best person, he's not a hero, and his intentions getting into this might not have been entirely selfless. Like he even mentions like it might have been because of ego. But I do like that they didn't just make him like a caricature in that regard. Like it did feel like he was trying to do the best that he could. And the movie kind of leaves that question, like, what is a life worth, a little bit open-ended, because it's really not a question you can definitively answer. Like, everyone's going to have a different opinion because of circumstance, because of context, and it's not something that can really be answered. But I do like that the movie sort of strays away from just going like, oh, it's worth any certain amount, you know? Like, I think that Stanley Tucci in a way was sort of playing that not devil's advocate, but like the lens of the audience, and sort of showing Ken, like,
he's the moral center of the film.
Right, exactly. That's why I say I really wish there was more of him in the movie, but I do love how they used him whenever he showed up. He gave such an impact, and asked all the right questions and said like all the right things, for me at least, where I was like, wow, okay, I was already into this movie, but it's sucking me in even more, because this is really, really interesting stuff.
His speech about the bridge is terrific writing.
That scene with him in the office,
really good advice.
Yeah.
For me, though, I think to kind of go off of what Adonis was saying, I think the movie is very competently made, and I actually like that it is fairly dry and willing to be a bit, unapproachable, I guess, in terms of like playing a character who is a bit of a challenge, like morally to pin down. And I also appreciate that, like, from a filmmaking standpoint, we often see, like, in the beginning or the first half of the film, Michael Keaton's character is often like facing like the center, or he's like in the center of the frame, kind of because like he feels like he has like a sense of like certitude about like what's going on even during this perilous time. But as the movie goes along, like, he's often shown like on the side of the frame or like adjacent to the center. And I think it's like a small thing, but it's like not super showy. I mean, I think it's done pretty well throughout the film. But I also feel like at the same time that the movie has like a sort of workman quality to it, where I was constantly thinking about like how they were executing the film. And for something that's fairly dressed down like this, I think thinking so much about the execution of the film and the performances took away from me being as invested in the character and the stories as much as I would like to, at least. But I think in terms of what the movie is doing and what it's trying to accomplish, I think it is well done, it's well acted. I agree. Definitely, I think Stanley Tucci is not only the star or the highlight of the film, but I think he should have been in it a little bit more to really bring the themes home in a way that would have been even more impacting. But I definitely think it's worth a watch, especially if you can get it on Netflix. I think it's, a sophisticated movie for adults, and these are becoming more and more rare, unfortunately. I do think the moviness of it does get in the way of approaching some of the more raw and earnest questions that it's trying to do. And also, I just, since you brought it up, I kind of find like the lecture scenes like that in the beginning to be kind of tropey in a bad way. Like, I just feel like that type of thing is really played out, but that's not really here nor there. But I'll say, like, outside of that type of stuff, I think the movie generally works and it's able to be impactful as it wants to be. But like I said, I also think a lot about the execution of the film while I'm watching it, and I'm not as emotionally invested, I think, because I'm thinking so much about like how they approach the movie from a filmmaking standpoint and not just being fully invested in the characters and the performances. But I think when it is able to be impactful, especially like we said during the testimonial scenes, it is really rich and haunting in particular scenes. So certainly I think more often than not, it works and succeeds at what it's trying to do.
Yeah, I think we agree more than we don't. Just a few things there that I'm kind of like, I think, when it comes down to me, like what I was getting at before too, my theory for why I don't think it's as hard hitting. I think that what it comes down to is like you have this whole movie where, and we should say this is based on a book, I think, that Kenneth Feinberg, a book or a magazine article or something. He wrote like something about this experience, and the movie kind of gets into like what he did after this stuff and all that. But I think that there is a sort of like egotistical quality to this movie because it really centers around this guy, because it is his story in a lot of ways. And some of that rubbed me the wrong way, but only because it felt a little bit to me like the movie is so focused in on, the answering the question of like, what's going to happen to this guy, when it's really supposed to be a movie about catharsis for these people. And it doesn't really strive for the emotional moving on for the people involved in this tragedy. And I think that's the disconnect a little bit. I think the movie is trying to avoid that because it puts in all these lines of like, nothing we can do can, alleviate people's pain. I think it's trying to avoid this sort of like, trying to come in and be like, and then everything was okay, and then these people were okay, or anything like that. And it's like, well, I think the decision is to focus it more on Kenneth Feinberg and his team having this sort of like growth and this sort of journey. And I think that's why it just doesn't quite come together emotionally, because it's like, well, sure, I'm glad that, Kenneth Feinberg has this like growth, that he has this arc. And I think it goes to interesting places. I think that Stanley Tucci, he's, best supporting actor, like he is like the best supporting actor by definition in this kind of movie. Amy Ryan as well as supporting, and they're kind of like laddering up to this conflict between this sort of like cold bureaucracy numbers game of trying to do the right thing, but staying within the confines of the system, and having that moral center, as was mentioned. And I think the movie just sort of like gets to a point where it's like, well, we got to end now. And instead of kind of sticking to its guns on being like, well, you know what, when it comes to the question, what is life worth? There is no easy answer. It kind of just comes up with this sort of like hackneyed Hollywood movie sort of, well, here we go. We're just going to solve things. Kenneth Feinberg gets a moment with Tate Donovan's character. There's, it just kind of goes like the moviness, I think you said, Will, kind of gets in the way, I think, of like an ending that would have resonated more and would have had more of an effect. And I think it's a testament to how some of the more impactful scenes to that effect are with the Donato family. And, there are a few like final notes of that, particularly with Laura Benanti, who just, her last scene is fantastic. I mean, it's so good. And yeah, I think that stuff kind of outshines, I think, what's lacking ultimately. It's like, yeah, it doesn't quite have that punch at the end, but it does have so much good stuff along the way that it's easy to recommend it.
Yeah, and I should just clarify, when I bring up like the quote unquote moviness of a movie, I mean, that can be kind of vague. And so I want to clarify that, like, when I bring that up, I just mean like for something like this, that's obviously, like I said, trying to be dressed down or trying to be a little bit more realistic, when like those kind of like scenes that feel a bit like contrite or feel like they are very scripted come into play. They kind of think take away. Sorry, contrived. My apologies. But like when those elements or scenes come into play, I think they take you out of it because the movie itself is trying so hard to be closer to realism or reality that like when it feels like there's some like artifice in the room, then they stand out. They're a little bit more jarring. And that's what I just want to clarify that.
The same issue with Trial of Chicago 7, I thought. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. More so with that film than I think in this one.
I was going to say, I really would have liked to see more of Shinori Ramantan, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. But she played Priya, who is one of the people on Kenneth Feinberg's team, but she was actually there when the attack on the Twin Towers happened, and that was a really interesting character that I feel like wasn't utilized as much as she could have been. Like there were moments where...
Was she there though? I thought it was that she was supposed to start there that week, but she wasn't.
Yeah, I think John's correct.
Oh, okay. I thought I was a little confused too.
She was supposed to be on the same team as Stanley Tucci's wife, I think.
Oh, okay. Because I thought, wasn't there a moment with her in the elevator where she mentioned that she still kind of had like PTSD from like just being in small spaces? I think survivor's
guilt is what they're alluding to.
Yeah, I think it's...
okay.
But also, like, there were people who, like, weren't directly involved with 9/11 that had, like, some PTSD just from, like, close association, or, like you said, like, being like they should have been there, like, a week before or something like that. Like, there was... That was a pretty common thing during and around 9/11.
Right. I don't know. I feel like she could have offered a little bit more to the movie, and they didn't utilize her as much as they could have.
She hasn't been in a lot of stuff. I think she was in Big Sick and a few smaller films, but I think this could be the start of like some bigger roles for her, for sure. She's good at it, for sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the haunting things about this movie, and I'll finish on this since we're going so long, but I did think that, like, when 9/11 happened when we were all pretty young, I was like 10 years old, I think. I was about to turn 11. And
I was in elementary school.
Yeah, we were young. And I think, Adonis, you were even younger because you're a bit younger.
I was 3 years old. Yeah.
Okay.
Jeez, You don't even...
we have vivid memories. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you even have any memories from 9/11?
None of my own, but my grandma does. She has told me about she was one of the people who was like on their way there when it was going on and stuff. Like she was in the area and she'd heard about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Glad she's all right.
Yeah.
So it was kind of haunting a little bit to sort of like, you don't see much, like they don't do like a recreation or anything like that. They kind of do like the news reports thing. And I think that's for the best. But I think part of what makes those testimonials so impacting is like there are scenes where, at times they're just describing like the last conversations they had, but then you hear audio and you hear about like what people went through. And, there are some things that like I'd forgotten. It's been years. Right. And, it's something we kind of think about once a year, but then it's not something we really like. The trauma of it is not something I personally like revisit very often. And yeah, it was something else to kind of go through that again. It's difficult. So I would say that, if you're going to watch the movie, just be prepared for that. It's not the, the big feel good movie necessarily of the fall, even though it has feel good moments.
To be fair, I think the movie's pretty delicate about that stuff. Like,
Agreed.
It gets you in the headspace and shows you the aftermath and it shows you like
it's tasteful.
The events. Yeah. But I think it's more about like the characters reckoning with it. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is the sort of scene I think in a lesser film they would have cut out because it doesn't impact the story, but it's one that I think is so key to the film and why I feel like I was a little disappointed that it didn't hit me more was when Stanley Tucci was like cleaning out the fridge, and like it, it's a sort of scene that's like it doesn't explicitly tell you what happened, but it tells you everything you need to know about what just happened to Stanley Tucci's character. And I think those moments are brilliant. And I think that's where the movie's at its best. And I kind of wish the movie was on that level more than, like I said, some of the more movie-ish scenes. But I think the fact that it has those scenes showcases a director who is certainly going to do some great things moving forward.
Well, you can watch Worth right now on Netflix. It is 118 minutes long. Goes by pretty fast for just under 2 hours, I thought. Even the second time, I'd say. Rotten Tomatoes time, though. Let's see who's going to come out on top. I feel like you guys are basically tied at this point. You both gotten a little bit here and there. But let's see what happens on this one. Worth. Will Ashton, what do you think this Rotten Tomatoes score is? Best guess.
78%.
And Adonis.
I'm going to go 75%.
So I think Will's cheating. 78%. I think Will was like, well, I got to win this thing. It's exactly 78.
Oh, wow. Oh, man.
Out of 73 reviews, Adonis, you were close. But you have a chance to redeem yourself, Adonis. You go first. Audience score. Let's go.
Oh, I'm going to go 85%.
85 for Adonis. And Will?
I'm going to go lower just because it seems like the type of film that audiences aren't crazy about. So I'm going to say 64%.
It's in between you two. It's 77. So
wow.
Nobody was quite that close. So pretty close to the Rotten Tomato score.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, that is Worth. And that is also our show. Thank you so much for listening. And, as usual, we'll be back next week. I haven't even looked at, I don't even know what's coming out next week. I think Malignant. I have it right here since I have Rotten Tomatoes, but Malignant. Yes. I honestly don't know much about that movie.
That is the new film from director James Wan.
Okay. Awesome. And, excited to see this horror film at,
sure.
9 a.m. on a Friday.
Yes.
Most likely. I know. Card Counter. I forgot.
Yes,
that's
I was going to say the Paul Schrader film. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'll be able to check that one out. And I did already see cool. Kate, the new that's another new Netflix one.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's coming out. Yeah. I was looking forward to that until you told me it wasn't very good.
Yeah, I still say maybe give it a shot, but I don't know if you've seen the latest Rotten Tomatoes score. It looks like
no, I haven't.
I won't give it away because there's a game we play.
You already took out maybe potentially 50%, so I'm like already on the rise for next
I gave you a little bit of an advantage, but it's fine. You get those from time to time. There's also something called The Voyeurs coming out on Amazon Prime Video.
Oh, that's Sydney Sweeney's film.
Sydney Sweeney, and I think Justice Smith is in it.
Yes.
Maybe. I'd have to double check that. Okay.
Detective Pikachu's friend.
Justice Smith. Buddies.
Yeah.
That's everything coming out next week. And we'll plug your Twitter again. Adonis, thanks for guesting. And your Twitter is in the show notes. But anything else you want to plug before we say goodbye?
Besides my Twitter? No, there's nothing else.
If you wanted to say the actual Twitter out loud, in case somebody's like, well, I don't have time to get to the show notes.
I'm not going to read. So it's at Adogon21. That's ADOGON21. And I tweet stuff on there. So definitely look out for that.
Will do. All right. And that's it for us this week. Signing off from the Internet California. I'm John Negroni.
From the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Lash.
From the Internet Massachusetts, I'm Adonis Gonzalez.
See you next time.